If you fancy something really nice and sweet for tea time today, now, sort of late morning, is about the right time to get started. I'm going to make some really nice sweet French brioche buns. I've got 7 ingredients, but most of these you'll have in your house, in the fridge, wherever. And by the way, I've now started seeing a lot more strong bread flour in the shops. So if you haven't been able to get it so far, you might now be able to get hold of some. So I've got some strong bread flour, white. I've got some normal caster sugar or granulated sugar, it doesn't really matter. Some butter, 3 eggs, drop of milk, and I've got some salt. Yes, you do put salt into sweet breads, okay? And I've got some dried yeast. Where's my pot, just for you to see? I use this dried easy bake yeast, okay? Because it lasts for months in the cupboard, and it's got a nice plastic lid on it, so it stores really easily. So first of all, I'm going to put my strong white flour, 400 grams, into a bowl. And it does help, by the way, especially if you're not familiar with baking, I'm making flour clouds, to weigh everything out and measure it out in advance, because then you know you're not going to forget something, okay? So brioche buns are sweet and lovely, so we're going to add some sugar, about 4 tablespoonfuls, about a teaspoonful of normal table salt, and about 1.5 teaspoons of the dried yeast, okay? So we can give that a little stir to get all the sugar, the yeast, the salt and the flour nicely mixed, make a little well in the middle. Then we're going to move on to, we need 3 eggs. So I got some lovely eggs from our neighbour up the road that she drops off for me. So we'll just crack those into a separate bowl, so that if you've got any shell in, you can easily take it out, and obviously if you've got a rotten egg, you can smell it and detect it well in advance. So we're going to give it a little whip with a fork. And then I'm going to add my melted butter, okay? So I had, I think, about 65 to 70 grams of normal butter, or margarine is fine there. And I've just melted it until it's just melted. I'm going to add that to my eggs, give it another little whip. And then I'm going to add the milk, about 100 mils of milk into there. And then my eggy, buttery mix goes in too, okay? Then we just bring all this together. Melting the butter makes it much easier to mix in, and of course also it warms it up, and that in turn will warm the dough, and the yeast likes to work best at about body temperature, so it's beneficial for lots of reasons to just warm that butter ever so slightly. If you don't add butter and you just want to use milk, that's perfectly fine too. They won't be quite as rich, but warm your milk a little bit first, okay? So this should now bring it all together to form one lovely warm ball of dough, okay? And if you haven't made bread before, it's a very similar process to normal bread, except of course we're enriching it with the egg and the milk and the butter, and we're sweetening it with a bit of sugar. So a little bit of bread flour on the surface like that, and then I'm going to tip this out, and this is where I'm going to have to tell you what to do, but actually you will need a few minutes or sort of an hour in between each phase so that the dough can prove. So I'm just using a bit of flour on my fingers, moving it around with my fingertips to start with to remove any sort of stickiness, and then I'm moving on to the heel of my hand and I'm starting to push and pull the dough. So I'm pushing with one hand and pulling back with the other. A little bit more flour. One of these is really useful if you bake regularly, a little scraper to clear the surface. And we just pull it back, push it, bring it back. Everybody has their own method, okay? And if you've got a different method to me, that's perfectly fine. This is how I work best. If you've got a large batch of dough, of course, you can use both hands like that. Some people like to just bang it down like this. Some people like to punch it. I've taught so many children how to make bread, and I've seen so many different techniques, and they all work just as well. Okay, so we'll just do this. I'm not going to do it for 5 or 6 minutes because you will get very bored. But I would normally do it for 5 or 6 minutes, and then I would tuck the edges in like that and pop that back in the bowl to prove, okay? If you forget the word prove, of course, it's Mr. Yeast proving that he's still alive and acting. Leave that to prove. It should double in size, and after about an hour, you take it out. I'm going to pretend I've taken it out, and this is where you just divide it up into little portions. I tend to take the top and I twist it round like that until it makes a nice perfect little ball. If you're a little bit more familiar with shaping dough, you can just roll it around like this. You've seen them do this so many times on Bake Off. Okay, and then you can pop it into either a little silicone pot, a little silicone cup like that, or if you haven't got either of those, pop it into a tin like this, okay? Remember to oil them well, okay? So a little ball like this, pop it in, leave that again to proof for about half an hour, okay? So that's why I said you need to start now for tea time. An hour to prove in the first instance, shape it, a good half an hour then for it to rise again in the shape you want. Give it a little glaze with an egg wash, just whip up an egg and glaze the top and pop it in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes, after which you will have some delicious French brioche buns for tea.